And man, this topic is depressing. Holy crap. Yeah, the 5070 Ti launched this week, and in common with the release of the 5080 and the 5090, there have been stock issues, which I understand is down to inconvenient timing with Chinese New Year, where there's basically a big shutdown of stuff that's happening over there. 5070 Ti had problems before the reviews began, simply because the stated pricing that was appearing on storefronts was nowhere near the $750 NVIDIA said that the product would cost. Review samples were seeded to the press, which we were told were MSRP cards. Now, we had the MSI 3X Ventus OC, which didn't appear to actually be an MSRP card anywhere other than the UK, which is slightly problematic. And obviously there was a lot of talk about the Asus Prime model that the US outlets were reviewing as also having limited availability at MSRP. I think the thing that is probably most annoying from my perspective is that MSRP cards shouldn't be the exception, they should be the rule. The overclock cards, the not limited edition, the more expensive cards, which only ever have like small overclocks in place anyway, they should actually be secondary, in my opinion. Anyway, let's go to some supporter questions here, because there's a lot of feelings about this. We'll start off with this one from SJ33 in brackets, Jake. Hi, Jake. As a reviewer, how do you approach reviewing a GPU when a price might only exist in theory? Taking the 5070 Ti as an example, that $749 doesn't mean much when AIBs are largely pricing their cards significantly higher than that. And that's before even taking into account scalping on top of that. If that $749 only exists in Jensen's imagination, how does a reviewer determine the value proposition of a GPU when the real-world price is all over the place? We obviously can't review a hypothetical future scenario where things may actually be MSRP, especially when that would presumably require a voluntary price drop from AIBs. A review of the 5070 Ti at $749 is different to a review at $900. And I entirely agree. However, Rich, which isn't me, responded with this. I think this is ridiculously unfair to NVIDIA. You're essentially holding them to an impossible standard. AIBs have always existed and always charged a range of prices above MSRP. That's nothing new and not exclusive to NVIDIA or the 5070 Ti. It's not like NVIDIA makes the extra profit from the AIB's higher prices. Hardware reviews tend to drop on the very first day the hardware is available. It's completely unfair to judge availability based on the first day, where any in-demand product will sell out. There's nothing quote-unquote hypothetical about the assumption that supply will get better over the following months and weeks. That literally happens all the time outside of unusual circumstances like COVID. What Rich said in his review was perfectly fair. Many people will see the review weeks or even months from now. Basing every judgment on what was true on day one would be a disservice to those viewers. Final comment here from Chew Frames.
That's a great
Rich, you raised an interesting topic in your 5070 Ti review video that I'd like to see you guys discuss. In the video card market, why is it the norm that so many manufacturers produce so many variants of a base chipset priced far above MSRP? Is there any good reason customers have to suffer this approach when we don't see it, for example, with the latest PlayStation or Apple tech getting released as an MSI, EVGA, PNY, etc., Windforce OC, Extreme, Master Ice, take your pick editions? The most egregious aspect, of course, is the price hike over the card's recommended price by NVIDIA. When Jensen gets on stage and announces the latest stack and MSRP, it's false advertising in a sense, as it does not represent the vast majority of that product that customers can realistically buy. And with that, reviewing the value of a new GPU and looking at price to performance metrics cannot be done meaningfully. Case in point, looking at scan.co.uk, I can pre-order a 5080, which was £979 for the FE, for anyone with the hacking skills to get one, from Asus for £1,519. This is, of course, one of the worst cases. But what justification is there for an over 50% price increase for what is essentially the same product? And will this just be the way it is going forward? Yeah, I mean, my quick reaction to this, I mean, as I said in the review, I don't understand the legitimacy of the AIB model in the current era. It used to be the case that there would be cards, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, that there would be cards at MSRP, and then you would get like a deluxe version with like a better cooler and perhaps a nice overclock in place.
Right.
But you wouldn't be charging like, 50% extra for the product.
No.
Unless it was doing something gigantically extreme that transforms the product. That's not happening here.
No, the like extreme case in the back days, like I was just thinking about like the 8800 GT. There's the EVGA one, there was the 8800 GT, then there was the SC, the SSC, and then there would maybe be a different model above that. There were some rare AIBs who would double the VRAM amount, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Another thing would be low profile cards. Those still technically exist, but they are definitely not at all the norm, like for PNY to make a low profile or something like that. Those are not the common ones. There would also be ones that would only use passive cooling, not possible in the current day and age probably. And then there'd be your Kingpin, right? The card that is designed to come with a water block, maybe even something else. It would have like a completely tunable voltage, all of these things. But I am really agreeing with the second comment, and as also in your review, as you mentioned, that the AIB model for me now seems, for a lot of cards, like some weird middleman that purely exists to extract more value from the consumer and doesn't actually offer valid differentiation for the price increase. And that example from the 1,500 pound Asus 5080
Yeah, I mean,
there's no card that should be that much for a 5080. It's just not worth it. Like,
well, a 5080 Ti, perhaps.
Oh yeah,
which is a completely different product, right? That's the sort of issue that we're dealing with here. Yeah, I mean, what can I say, John? Do you have any thoughts on this before I weigh in still further?
No, I mean, I'm completely in agreement with you guys, and it's interesting to see how the market has evolved in these days. But as I insinuated there, I do miss the days of the Evil Commando. I mean, if you're going to put out these more expensive cars, at least give it a great name, right?
Yeah, and a picture of a poorly rendered cyborg on the front,
right? With the shiny metal finish, right? That's what we're missing here.
That's amazing.
Oh dear. Yeah, I was just trying to pull it. I mean, obviously, one of the most expensive cards, I think, was the Asus version, which has come up. I'm just looking up to see. I mean, I'm looking at Guru 3D at the moment, and Time Spy graphics score. The standard 5070 Gi, 27,773 score there.
Right.
The Asus one, 27,981. So,
oh my God, percentage-wise, that's pitiful.
Yeah. What's the point? What is the point? I mean, it is, as you say, Alex, seemingly a decision to extract more value in some nebulous way. I'm sure there's further overclocking that can be had from it, but ultimately, the era of overclocking kind of tailed off post Maxwell, where NVIDIA and just about everyone else thought, hey, why are we actually building in overclocking headroom into our products when we can give the vast majority of it to our users as standard? Mm-hmm. And so, the concept of overclocking has been diminished, and therefore the concept of strapping on gigantic fans and heat sinks onto designs that don't really need it has also caused this issue. But what's happening now is that, we're seeing this vast array of products on launch day where we don't need a vast array of products. We just want a product that's available for the stated price point that does the job in a competent way. And, anything else is gravy. If you want that stuff, then, maybe in the second wave, produce those cards that come along and for the enthusiasts to tool around with, for example. But the concepts that you have this vast array of 5070 Ti's available at launch, very few of which you can actually buy, very few of which are actually at MSRP, It's seemingly a relic of a bygone age here, and at this point, it's just serving to wind people up completely.
I feel like you just kind of explained why they can do it, though, because, like you said, you can't buy these because they're all sold out. So,
well, this is the elephant in the room, right? Which is the concept of market price, which is the concept that if it sells, then somebody wants to buy it at that price. And then, insult to injury, there's the concept that there'll be an additional scalper's fee added when that card is then resold. I mean, fundamentally, there needs to be a complete rethink of this. I think part of the thing that's exacerbating the problem with the 5070 Ti is that there's no Founders Edition card. Founders Edition always sort of sets a baseline, so to speak. Right. And you'd hope that they would be produced in sufficient volumes. But, ultimately, this just creates a really bad consumer experience for people that want NVIDIA GPUs. And surely NVIDIA's got to sit up and take notice. They've got this loyalty program being resurrected where, you can essentially verify yourself as a gamer, as remarkable as that sounds, and get access to Founders Edition cards. A step in the right direction, but it just seems to me that the whole system at the moment is gamed towards marking up these things as much as the market will tolerate, and in the meantime, really annoying customers at the same time. Why is this only happening on graphics cards? I mean, 9800X3D. AMD puts out a CPU. You don't have an ASUS version of it with a gigantic cooler attached and RGB lights. You're free to choose your own cooler. Well, the whole point of the PC market is that you customize it to what you want, right? So, the 9800X3D, you buy the cooler that's best for your build. The concept that decision is sort of taken away from you with these 1,500 quid cards.
Which look ugly, by the way.
It's insane.
Yeah, they're hideous.
Of them do, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing, of course.
Imagine if there was a 3070 with 16 gigs of RAM. Or a 5070 with 24, right? Like, imagine if AIBs were actually bringing value there for the price. Like, I think someone would actually buy a 5070 with 24 gigs of RAM because that GPU is super compelling, probably when it comes out. But if it's limited by 12 gigabytes, a lot of people are going to see a lack of utility there. But then you come in as an AIB, actually add some value there and differentiate the product. But that won't happen. Either is that NVIDIA saying, no, don't make that product. That ruins our stack.
I think historically there have been stories that that NVIDIA does define what the stack looks like and what the core composition of the product is, and AIBs have to work within those restrictions. Obviously, we've got the situation at the moment where you can actually get higher capacity modules. GDDR7, which would be a differentiating factor, right? It could be a game changer for something like the 5060 that's coming out, which allegedly has 8 gigabytes of RAM. What can I say? It's horrifying to me as a content producer to be told that, hey, here's this MSRP card, go ahead and review it. And then to sort of find out after the fact that it's not an MSRP card outside of the UK, when the vast majority of our audience are not in the UK. There's got to be more transparency about this. There's got to be a more robust pre-ordering system, because basically what happened on the 20th when the cards appeared was, everybody's sort of set up their own, multi-tab browser setup for, all of their major stores. 5070 Ti put into the search parameters F5ing until something comes up, hurriedly trying to get the cheapest possible card, the card that's, I say cheap, it's actually what NVIDIA says it's going to cost. And then, a lot of people end up disappointed. A lot of people having to move on to cards that they don't probably have any need for in terms of bigger coolers and whatnot. The whole thing just really needs to be tightened up. And again, as I said in the review, I've bought this isn't this. Well, I guess availability is a problem here, but every console launch there's been availability issues. But every console launch I've managed to get at least one unit.
Right.
In some cases, 5 when I've had to get one for everyone in the team. And you're just, you have an arranged time when a pre-order window opens. You pre-order the card or the product, rather, the console, and it arrives when they say it's going to arrive at the price it was originally advertised for. How difficult can that be?
Apparently,
if you
very
can't
difficult.
do that, if you can't do that, we got serious issues.
Man,
I suspect things will probably be easier with the 5070. I suspect, based on the stories of stockpiling of the AMD RDNA 4 cards, which apparently has been going on for some months now, that'd be less of an issue there potentially. I guess the other thing that
I hope so.
I guess the other thing that springs to mind is that, there's been some negative reactions to primarily the 5080 and the 5070 Ti in terms of the core performance of the product, and yet the demand is clearly there for these products, which I find quite interesting.
man.
And I think part of the reason for that is that NVIDIA actually does control inventory quite well from their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
By the time the 5070 Ti comes out, it's basically impossible to get a 4070 Ti Super at MSRP. They do actually have a phased sort of
Production.
production and reduction of existing inventory, whereas it's still possible for me to buy RDNA 2 cards from AMD right now. Anyway, look, this whole situation really does need to have something done to it. There seems to be a lot of people in the chain, all of which are potentially acting outside of NVIDIA's guidelines in ramping up the prices because they know they'll sell them. But at the same time, it's just causing a huge amount of consumer anger and the blowback here. And it's very difficult, going back to some of these questions, to actually decide how to review them, because value is
right.
If you've got a whole stack of cards with varying levels of performance, how much performance you're getting for the money is a crucial aspect of that. Mm-hmm. Right? You can't ignore it.
Man,
it seemed to me that the 5070 Ti is realistically not a $750 product. I'd say realistically it's more of a $900 product. I think that sort of seems to be the case. So I did actually run the numbers, because we've obviously got the ability now just to take all of our data, apply price points to them, and basically in our existing review, the 5070 Ti, based on the cards that were tested, comes out as the best value, right? But in actual fact, if we reprice it at $900, it's exactly the same value proposition as the 4070 Ti Super, and only slightly better than the 3080, based on its performance versus its $700 MSRP. Yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky. I don't really like it.
We've just reached an interesting point, Alex. I want to take you back. Things change, obviously. Prices vary. February 19th, 2013. Do you know what day that was?
February. It sounds like the 7080
It was the
Ti
launch of the GeForce GTX Titan for $999 US. The most high-end card in the stack. Then 2 years later, the Titan X, $999. Like, it's amazing how much the value proposition has shifted. And now $999 is kind of like the mid-range, upper mid-range category. It's just wild. I feel like we're actually back to like 90s PC prices in a way.
Yeah, and the way
like
it feels.
90s PC prices were very high. Things would change fast, but like thousands upon thousands to build a PC. And then it felt like it got a lot more affordable for everyone with good performance. And now we're on the upswing back towards these really high prices.
Yeah, like those early 90s, you'd look at like a PC just
Falcon Northwest
without even a graphics accelerator. Yeah, and it'd be ridiculous.
4, 5, 6,000.
We're back at it for these actually higher tier gaming PCs. I find it a bit shame.
Yep.
But like I described last week, technically that Intel card is still sitting there. That's really cheap.
True.
So don't forget that PC gaming still has cheap stuff. It's just, it would be nice if obviously it ran everything perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, what can I say? There is a knock-on effect to this. It does mean that the GPU you currently own is retaining more of its value. Especially bearing in mind that there isn't a stratospherically huge leap in performance between 40 series and 50 series. The lack of availability for 50 series combined with that small generational leap, if you can call it that even, means that those older cards are actually still holding their value. So I'm just looking at eBay here. There's an RTX 4080 Super. Actually, yeah, it is a 4080 Super. The bidding isn't finished yet. It's at £841. That was a $999 card. So there's a knock-on effect also to used prices as well. Somebody here trying to get a $1,300 buy it now price on a 4080 Super. It's kind of getting out of control. We aren't in, correct me if I'm wrong, but we aren't in lockdown with COVID anymore, which was the last time this sort of thing happened. All I can really assume is that PC gaming has never been more popular and people really want to have great performing products.
I found a great deal for an Asus RTX 5090 for 4,400 euros.
Wow, what a steal.
Nice.
That's nuts. Yeah. Buy it now price for buy it now price for a 4090 Ventus. Actually, no, it's about £2,000. I mean, it's just nuts at the moment. Everything's just gone crazy.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to the fact that the retail prices are just completely out of control at this point.